Most of us at some point in our life have had certain things stolen from us, possessions, and those things oftentimes can be restored, and they're insured many times, and we just replace them. But what about a stolen hope, a stolen dream, a stolen marriage, a stolen future? It's difficult for us to deal with things that we thought were supposed to be ours and end up not being ours. And many of us in the room, we've experienced the loss of someone who is dear to us. We always feel the timing is off. Why did this have to happen now? Why did it take place? Why now? And we feel the heaviness of the loss and the pain of it. And oftentimes it takes a long time, and sometimes we don't ever get over of some things that we feel were taken from us, particularly if it's something that someone has done to us. We feel like something has been stolen from us. I want you to imagine with me for just a moment what it was like for a group of people anticipating what they referred to as the Messiah. Suddenly they believe he's here. They develop a relationship with him. And just so that you understand, many of the disciples were not older men. Some of them were teenagers. And Jesus identifies certain ones, and specifically remember the 12, and then there are others that will begin to follow him, and they develop this close relationship with him. And you know when you've got somebody that, does anybody have a best friend? Okay. Somebody you're close to, and suddenly, the person they were hoping in, the person they were believing in reality, they weren't just believing in him, they were believing in what they thought he was going to bring them. You see, oftentimes people don't follow another person for what that person and who that person is. They follow them for what they can get out of that person. I mean, let's be honest about it. Sometimes when we're following spiritual leaders for whatever reason, we're not following them for them, we're following them for us. We want a prophetic word, we want a healing, we want something else. But these relationships were very close that Jesus had with people. But even they were understanding Jesus as being somebody that was going to overthrow this oppressive Roman government and take over, and the kingdom of God is coming, and they're going to rule with Jesus, and it's all going to be good. But he's killed. He's put in a tomb. And everything they thought was going to be reality is now gone. You have this one woman. Her name was Mary. Here's how the Bible puts this story. It says, now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. Now you have to understand which Mary this was, okay? This was known as Mary Magdalene. Why is that important? She was from a place called Magdala. Magdala was a little fishing village that Jesus periodically would go to and teach in the synagogue. We don't know a lot about Mary, but one thing we do know about her was that the Bible identifies for us that she was controlled by, overseen by, manipulated by 7 demons. And the Bible simply tells us that Jesus cast the demons out of her and her life turned around. You think about going into Magdala, and there were certain people in every community, you know, that, oh, that's Billy, that's Joe, that's Mary, and she's known as Crazy Mary. What do you mean? Well, she's controlled by something else, and everybody knew who Mary was. And you understand, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I'd like to be demon-possessed. We don't know how she got from the place of when she was born to where now she has no more control. Something else is controlling her. Magdala had a Roman outpost located at it, maybe because Roman soldiers were not kind to little girls. Maybe something had happened to her there. And as she tries to numb the pain, it may be that she tries to use something to keep herself from feeling the reality of life, and now she's addicted, and now she's struggling, and now it's one addiction, it's another struggle, it's depression, it's oppression. You realize a lot of people act the way that they do because they're trying to drown out some pain that was never dealt with. A lot of the pain that you and I have, it starts when we're kids. And we just build on top of it year after year after year. And before long, oh yeah, there's crazy Mary. She's controlled by multiple things. And it's not as though she likes it. It's not as though she says, it's okay. She really didn't want to be that way, but she didn't quite know how to get out of her issue. You see, that's the problem with a lot of people in our culture. And let's just not talk about the culture for a minute. Let's talk about those of us who maybe go to church every week. We're in this particular struggle, issue, addiction, oppression, depression, whatever it is. We don't really like it, but we don't know how to get out of it. And it stays with us year after year after year. And of course, we're good spiritual, religious, Southern Bible Belt church-going people. We certainly could let anybody know that behind closed doors there's a deep issue going on. We look great on Sunday morning, but behind the doors that are closed on Saturday night, on Monday night, on Tuesday night, there's this pain, there's this issue, there's this struggle, and we just don't know what to do with it. That's Mary. Jesus goes to Magdala one day, and suddenly Mary is in the crowd of people that Jesus is praying for, and Jesus identifies what's going on with her. Can I just tell you, Jesus is not scared of our demons. Whatever the issue, whatever the struggle, whatever the problem, it's not an issue to Jesus. And suddenly, the life that looked like it was never going to change, it does a 180, and the demons are gone. She's freed. She starts to follow Jesus. Closer and closer she gets to him along with others. But then things shifted because the unexpected happened. See, we like to be in control, right? We're all, look at somebody and say, you got control issues. we like to have control. But sometimes things get out of our control. We can't do anything about it. And we're grasping, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And Jesus is crucified. He's dead. And she stands outside the tomb crying. It's that Mary. And the word here for wept, it's not just like a few tears. It is a sobbing, shrieking type of wailing. She bent over to look into the tomb. She saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body has been, one at the head and the other at the foot. Now, the stone had been rolled away. Remember this, that the stone was rolled away not so Jesus could get out, but so you and I could get in. Okay. And she's seeing these angels. The angels, where's Jesus? I don't want to see angels. I want to see Jesus. They said, woman, why are you crying? And they've taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they put him. And she turned around and she saw Jesus standing there. She didn't realize it was Jesus. It's likely early in the morning, maybe a little foggy as it was. It gets that way in Israel. And notice the conversation. Jesus says to her, woman, Why are you crying? I want you to look at somebody right now. Say, why is this bothering you? Okay, whatever it might be. Who is it you're looking for? And thinking he was the gardener. If you've carried him away between her tears and her sobbing, and she has to get control of herself, if you've carried away, tell me where you put him and I'll get him. And then Jesus says one word to her, Mary. Listen, if you've ever heard the voice of Christ in your life, you'll never forget what his voice sounds like. Okay. A disciple named Thomas has been told that Jesus has been raised from the dead. He doesn't believe it. Here's the story. Watch this. Thomas, known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. Jesus had showed up. They're all telling him, hey, Jesus is alive. Said, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. We call him Doubting Thomas. Why don't you look at me in the eyeballs for a minute? Every one of us in this room have been a Doubting Thomas at some point in our life. Come on now. Let's not be too hard on him. Okay. Say, I don't believe it. You know what? I understand why he felt that way. Remember, he has just witnessed the most excruciating and painful way that anyone could die because the Romans had perfected crucifixion. And crucifixion didn't start at a cross. It started with something called a scourging. They would take this handle, and to the handle, which was known as a flagrum, they would attach pieces of leather. Then within the leather were little pieces of maybe bone or a type of pottery or glass or maybe something that was more metallic-like. And the Jews would whip you 39 times, but the Romans had no such law. They didn't care how many times you got whipped. And when they would whip a man, it would go into the outer parts of the skin. Then it would begin to rip into the muscle. And oftentimes, and they just beat you. The Roman soldiers, they were just there to make sport of people. They didn't really care. And oftentimes, a person would die just from the scourging itself. When they were done with the scourging piece, they'd put the clothes back on the man because they'd strip the man and put him over this whipping post. They would then take him to the place where he was going to be crucified. And crucifixion was used as a threatening tool by the Romans because when you saw a man with a crossbar on his body walking to the outside of the city, you knew that man wasn't coming back. 7-inch spikes. Oftentimes, it would take days for somebody to die. That's why the Roman soldiers would hang out at the cross for days. And the reason they actually broke the legs of people that were being crucified is because they'd have this little foot stop underneath them so that they could lift themselves up as they were being crucified, because most people that were crucified died of suffocation because they couldn't lift their body up to breathe, and that's why they broke their legs to hasten the death process up. And according to prophecy, however, they did not break the legs of Jesus. Not a bone of his body would be broken, the Bible said. So when they came to Jesus and they saw he was already dead, they didn't break his legs. And Joseph goes to Pilate and says, "Can I have the body, please?" It's the body. So I understand why Thomas doubted. You have Jesus between two thieves, remember? And Jesus is always in the middle. This is why Jesus is the mediator between us and God. Jesus always gets in the middle of our stuff. Oh, I'm in the middle of this. I'm in the middle of family issues. I'm in the middle of struggle. I'm in the middle of doing this. I'm in the middle of doing that. And the reality of it is, this is what Jesus does. He gets in the middle of our messes. He's in the middle of it. And Thomas is in the middle of his own decision making. I don't know. You're telling me he's alive, but I don't think so because I haven't seen it myself. There may be some of you in this room. Yeah, I got family members that go to church. They say Jesus is real. Yeah, okay, he's real, but I haven't seen it for myself. I understand that because Thomas was in the same place. You're in the middle just like Thomas. So one day, the Bible says that this particular time, Thomas was in the room. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Can I just tell you something? Locked doors don't keep Jesus out. Okay. You can say, "I don't want him." You can close your eyes. You can say it's not real. I don't want it. I don't want to serve God. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go my own way. I'm just going to live however I want to live. I'm telling you, Jesus is getting ready to get behind your closed door, whether you like it or not. Why? Because he loves you so much. Goes behind the closed door and he says, "Peace." Just look at somebody right now and say, "Peace." Okay. Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And Thomas says this. It wasn't like, "Oh my Lord." It wasn't that. It was, "My Lord, my God." One of the most outspoken disciples that Jesus had was Peter. Peter tended to talk when he shouldn't talk. Anybody know someone who talks too much? Stop looking at somebody right now. I just saw some of you looking at somebody. I saw you. Jesus can use people who talk too much. So, "I'll never deny you, Jesus." Not me. Little teenage girl drops him to his knees. I don't know who this guy is. 3 different times. Jesus said it was going to happen. 3 different times. Jesus is crucified. Peter doesn't know what to do. He's a fisherman, right? And so he says, "I guess I'll go fishing." So the story goes that the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, now they're out in a boat, okay? They're in the boat. And they look in the shore, they see this guy there because the guy on the shore, they don't know who it is. Again, it's early morning, it's foggy, it's at a little bit of a distance. They don't know it's Jesus. And this guy says, "Hey, put your net on the other side of the boat." They get this big catch of fish. Peter remembers what happened 3 years prior when Jesus called him. He said, "Hey, put the net on the other side of the boat." Peter recognizes it, remembers it, and he says, "It's the Lord." He jumps in the water. He swims into shore. The other disciples followed in the boat, dragging the net of fish. They were not far from the shore. And it's interesting, when they got there, they saw a fire of burning coals with fish on it. Can I ask you a question? When was the last time that Peter remembered sitting around a burning coal of fire? Remember? Read your Bible. It's on the night that he denied Jesus. He's sitting around a fire with everyone else, warming himself and denying the Lord. So, why does Jesus do this? Why does Jesus remind Peter? Watch what Jesus does. Peter's thinking, "You're getting a lecture. There's Jesus, I'm getting a lecture." No, Jesus doesn't give him a lecture, he gives him breakfast. He's not interested in giving you a lecture, he is interested in having a conversation with you about your life and your future. They get in there and watch this. Jesus starts to have this conversation. When they finished eating, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? You love me more than these fish? You love me more than your companions here?" "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." You'd think that would have been enough. And then Jesus says, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Take care of my sheep." That's the second time. Like that's weighing on Peter. And then Jesus just almost like Like, do you have to do this again, Jesus? Do you have to remind me of this again? The third time he says to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Let me ask you a question. Why does Jesus ask him 3 times, do you love me? Simply because Peter had denied him 3 times. And what Jesus is doing, listen, he's not trying to remind Peter of this terrible failure. He is saying, Peter, that was then, this is now. I am restoring you completely. And everything that you think you failed with, all that's turning around, and you're completely restored. This is what Jesus was doing here. This is what he does. He fixes things. Sometimes life gets messy.
This poem, Invictus, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That was my life. Here I am, 22 years old. I got the job, I got the money, I got the girl, I got the friends. I got everything that I wanted. I've reached it. Pretty high opinion of myself. I thought that I was a good person. Total freedom. I was happy. But at the same time, I was empty. Something was wrong. It shouldn't be this way. I was like, you know what? Let me just go back to church. I haven't been to church in years. And I had such an awful attitude. I mean, I was slouched down and my arms crossed. And it's like, okay, what does this church have to do with me? And then the preacher comes up, and I did not like this guy. I mean, way too much energy at like 10:30 in the morning. But that was when I finally heard the gospel. What gravitated me to Jesus was that he came to fill us, to satisfy us. And noticing that there was an emptiness, a void in my life, that's what attracted me to Jesus. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm all in. And I just threw myself into ministry. I walked away from my job, my friends, and for 7 years, I just dedicated my whole life to it. I conformed my whole life into this public image, running 110 miles per hour. I lived, breathed, ate, dreamt ministry, leading publicly. My performance is never good enough, collapsing privately. When you have that kind of narrative, there's no room for joy. I didn't have strong friendships, completely isolated, sobbing, hyperventilating. I took something good, like ministry, crazy panic attacks. I turned that into my identity. Something was dying. I didn't know who I was. Just deep, deep depression. I don't have it in me to change. That's where I found God. He was waiting for me. I think he had to take me to my hardest moments, because that's when he's like, this is the Jason who I've been waiting for. Now let's get to work. That's when God really started this excavation process in my life. He was upending so much, bringing me to these really difficult pain points in my life and having me to deal with those things. And what I've realized about my identity now, it really hit me when I became a father. And I remember when my daughter was about 1 year old and she's exploring the world. I would take her on walks and she's looking at nature, she's discovering things, and she's inviting me into her world. She's pointing at things and labeling them, and I get to share in that moment with her. And I just remember, like, that moment, I was like, God, is this how you see me? Are you proud of me? The most beautiful thing that I've learned through this whole process is really figuring out who I am becoming. Not what I'm doing. It's not arriving to some sort of place. It's being loved right now, where I'm at, with no expectations. Being fully known and fully accepted. And not just by God, but by people too. I think that is probably one of the most amazing things that I've come to realize is God's people love me not because of what I can do, not because I can fulfill some sort of need or expectation. People love me because of just who I am. And that is so new to me, but incredibly healing. My name is Jason Lee, and I am second.
Sometimes your life, our lives, my life gets messy. It was messy 2,000 years ago for a group of people. Just imagine it with me for a moment, witnessing all of that. But you've seen some things too. I've seen some things. Maybe not an outward beating and crucifixion, but inwardly you feel like you have been beat. There's pain on the inside of you. As I've been talking to you up here, I was just processing this. I say, why am I feeling such pain on both sides of my body right now? It's because somebody in the room is feeling deep pain. It's emotional pain, it's spiritual pain, it's physical pain. The resurrection of Jesus is not about some day of the year. You know, and everybody said, oh, he is risen. He's risen every day. But not as some sort of religious activity. It's Easter Sunday. Not for that reason. But because the power of Jesus Christ, power of God that pulled a man out of a tomb and raised him from death, is the same power that wants to raise you physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially in your life and get the sin dealt with, the sin issue. The life issue. I mean, can we stop treating Jesus like he's some sort of, I know some people are okay with it, but they got the crucifix. Jesus is on the cross. I said, throw those things away. He's not on the cross anymore. He's very much alive. Very much capable of dealing with your problems, your struggles, your addictions, your stuff, your hurts, your pain, your failures, your sin, your habits, your lusts, everything. It's more than about a day. It's about a Jesus that is able. If you have an encounter with him, if you want an encounter with him, everything shifts. And that which has had authority over you, you're going to get authority over it.